Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the plaintiff brings claims of false arrest, defamation, and malicious prosecution against Chandler's here today. Importantly, a statute in this jurisdiction allows Chandler's to detain a shoplifter or somebody they suspect may have stolen something from the store if they have a reasonable belief that they may have stolen something. Importantly, they also can detain that individual for as long as is reasonably necessary to figure out if they in fact did steal something. If there's no evidence of theft, it is required that the store let them go if they are innocent. That statute is behind the entire story you heard here today. And at the core of that statute is reasonableness. And that is the question of this case. It is not whether Miss Adams did or did not steal a bottle of perfume. And I beg you to remember that as we go back through the story and the evidence that you heard here today. And we're going to go back through the story one more time through the three witnesses for Chandler's and how they acted. And we are going to focus on how it was reasonable, how they viewed everything in real time, and they did everything in their power to act with the interest of justice and with the interest of their store in heart. And we're going to start with Kelly Jackson. On November 1st, 2018, Kelly Jackson came into the store like she would any other shift. And at 5:30 p.m., she put out on the counter several sample bottles of perfume, one of which was a Paris bottle of perfume. Those samples usually come right out of the box and they're filled to the brim. And they sit out on the counter so people can try them on throughout the day. So Kelly Jackson had done that. Now, she was working with somebody else that day, but about 6 o'clock when Miss Adams enters our story, she was working alone. Her partner was on break. And she was a little busy, but yet she wasn't too busy to go up to Miss Adams and ask her if she needed help around 6 o'clock when she first saw her. When she asked for help, Miss Adams declined and she walked away. Kelly Jackson didn't think much of it, goes back to work, but notices sometime later that the same patron had come back, the same customer had come back, Miss Adams. She notices a big black purse. And like any good employee would, she keeps an eye on her. From time to time, she's busy, but she keeps an eye on her. The next time she looks back, however, she notices that individual, Miss Adams, is putting a Paris perfume bottle, like the sample she put out just 30 minutes to an hour earlier, into her purse. And Kelly Jackson, like a good employee who's trained with shoplifters, who's experienced shoplifting, and knows that these are easy things to hide in a large black bag, gets alerted. And like any good employee, Kelly Jackson signals to Kevin Flanagan, the store detective standing by the door, that, hey, there might be a shoplifting event underway. So Kelly Jackson, we ask ourselves first, did Kelly Jackson act unreasonably? And the answer has to be no. The good employee who saw someone put a perfume bottle in her bag in the cosmetics department, someone that denied help who had a large black bag, which is often used for concealing, put that bottle in her bag and attempted to walk away. This is true despite Kelly Jackson having helped her, and even though she was busy, wasn't too busy to check in and see how Miss Adams was doing. So she walks away and Kevin Flanagan enters the scene. And we have Kevin Flanagan, a police officer during the day who does store security at night to supplement his income. He's a highly trained individual. And Kevin Flanagan intercepts Miss Adams as any good detective would. That's his job. And he asks Miss Adams to please stop and says, "Ma'am, I think you may have stolen something from us. And I just want to check into that a little bit more." And Miss Adams just tries to walk away from him. Dismisses him. Kevin Flanagan, trained in stopping shoplifters, goes, "Ma'am, I can't let you do that." And he escorts her back to the security office, grabs her by the arm. It's at this point that Miss Adams claims that she was loudly declared a shoplifter, but Kevin Flanagan in his deposition stated very clearly they're trained exactly not to say something like that because on the floor that might make the matters way worse. You do not want to make a scene. So he escorts her back. goes in and like the law allows, he searches her purse. And she consents to that search. And she's very quiet. She hasn't said anything yet. She hasn't said any part of her story. She's just denying that she could have shoplifted. Doesn't want to go back. Not saying, I brought this from home, or some other event happened, or just look in my purse, there's nothing in there. No. She's not claiming any innocence like that. So Kevin Flanagan goes through his job. He finds a Paris perfume bottle in there, exactly like the one Kelly Jackson, just moments before, had told him might be stolen. He had called her just moments when he got back to the security office. He had called Kelly Jackson to say, hey, what happened? And what did the person look like? He got confirmed that it was the person that he had stopped. And he got confirmed that there was a Paris perfume bottle that might be missing. He finds a Paris perfume bottle in a purse. Kevin Flanagan, like a good detective, next follows procedure. He doesn't accuse her of theft. He calls his manager. He calls his manager and he tells his manager the evidence that they have, what Kelly Jackson said. And he puts it rightfully on Pat Coran's hands, the manager of the store. Then enters Pat Coran. Pat Coran comes into this uncertain and fast developing situation, and at this point, Miss Adams flares up. She's mad. Now she says, I brought it from home. It was a gift from my parents. I'm a doctor. Don't you know any better? I would never do something like this because of my occupation. And Pat Coran's trying to interpret this all, and he's an empathetic store manager. He's got his store at interest. He's really not trying to send somebody to jail just because they stole a little something, like a Paris perfume bottle, which is under $50. But he also doesn't want to let this go unpunished. What happens if this theft becomes a habit? What happens if she is a shoplifter and she tells other shoplifters that, hey, go to this store, they'll let you do it? So he's got a lot of concerns in his mind, and it's fast, and it's developing. So what he decides to do is he sees this vulnerable doctor in front of him, young, doesn't seem like somebody that maybe has done this often in their life, and he wants to give her a break. He feels bad for her. He takes pity on her. The evidence, let's remember, does look like she stole something. We have a bottle of Paris perfume in her purse. We have a clerk who said, I saw her take it. The assumption isn't, hey, I brought it from home and I just took it out and put it back in. That's not the assumption here, but we have some more evidence to gather. But important to remember that Pat Coran in that moment is not thinking, wow, she must be innocent. Shoplifting happens. We have evidence. So he's trying to let her go right now. He doesn't want to go down the evidence, to go find more evidence right now. Let's just let this go away. I feel bad for her. So what he does, like a good manager would do and a compassionate one, he offers her a way out. He asks her to sign a waiver, and if she signs that waiver, promising not to sue the store, we're going to forget all of it. We're not going to get into prosecution. We're not going to get into any of it. However, Miss Adams makes a decision right then and there. She decides to not take that offer. She decides to yell at Mr. Coran, to belittle him, to make him seem inferior and out of his mind for thinking that she is not going to take down the store for the very thought that maybe she stole something. That is an unreasonable response to a very reasonable request by a manager. Now, Pat Coran should have in that moment, he could have prosecuted her right then and there. There's probably enough evidence. She was hostile. But like a good manager, Pat Coran wants to make sure she's not right. He wants to make sure there's evidence. And if she's right and she's going to sue the store and they were in the wrong, he wants to know so he can let her go and apologize like he always does. Like he said in his deposition, he always does if somebody's innocent. So he brings Detective Flanagan back over. He says, Detective Flanagan, I need you to go back to the floor and I need you to check and make sure that we are right about this. This is exactly what Detective Flanagan does. Like a good officer, he follows his order. He follows his protocol. His manager is who is guiding him. Again, no one has accused Miss Adams directly of theft. They're still trying to figure out if she has done this. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where it becomes really clear. Kevin Flanagan goes back out to the floor. Kevin Flanagan finds a missing Paris bottle. There's no Paris bottle, no sample bottle out there. Both Kevin Flanagan and Pat Coran testified that bottle that they found in the purse was full, just like a sample bottle would be. Even though Miss Adams says otherwise, you have two people saying that was full. So he finds no bottle out there, and he finds a sample sticker on the floor. There was no sample sticker on the bottle in her purse. So put all that evidence together if you're Pat Coran. Or you're not Pat Coran, but Pat Coran did put all that evidence together. Pat Coran goes, I have a sales clerk say, looks like something's been stolen. She sees the event happen. She sees Miss Adams put perfume in a big black purse and try to get out. He knows, because Detective Flanagan told him, that Miss Adams did not give in willingly. She tried to evade him on the way out. He knows that Miss Adams is hostile, scared. He knows that she had the bottle in her purse. She knows that it's the right person because Kelly Jackson confirmed with Detective Flanagan that it was the right person in holding. And now we have a missing bottle on the floor and a sample sticker on the ground. The bottle looks full and there's no sample sticker on it, the one that they confiscated from Miss Adams. It looks like theft. That is a reasonable belief that there was a theft. So Pat Coran does the only thing that he knows to do in this situation to protect his story. He's got to prosecute her. There's no malice behind that. If there was malice, he would have prosecuted her when she didn't sign the waiver, but he went and he looked for evidence to find innocence for her. Not to find guilt, to find innocence for her. And it wasn't there. So he made a reasonable decision. He decided to prosecute her so that this behavior does not go unpunished. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is not about whether she did or did not steal that perfume. Now, that takes care of malicious prosecution and false arrest because there was a reasonable belief for the prosecution. We just showed that it wasn't malicious. And there was a reasonable belief. And everybody acted reasonably. They held her for a period of time. Detective Flanagan acted reasonably. Now, defamation comes back in, and this is really a question about whose word you're going to believe. The words of Miss Adams, who proved to be hostile to Chandler's, and who the only other witness saying that they might have seen this defamatory statement about calling her a shoplifter, the only other person was Miss Williams, who Miss Adams knows personally, and who, interestingly, did not choose to step in. Had she really seen what she says she saw, which is Detective Flanagan declaring to the store that she was a shoplifter, that Miss Adams was a shoplifter, if she had really seen that, wouldn't she have stepped in? If somebody you knew and actually liked to work with, who had seen your kids, taken care of your kids as a doctor, was openly accused of shoplifting, and as Miss Williams claims, she saw that she wasn't guilty, that Miss Adams wasn't guilty, wouldn't you have stepped in? Why did she step in the next day when she read about the arrest in the newspaper? Why wouldn't she step in and say, no, she didn't shoplift? Who are you going to believe, Miss Adams and Miss Williams, whose story doesn't really seem to make sense? Or are you going to believe Detective Flanagan? What's more reasonable to believe that a detective who followed procedure throughout this entire event, who works during the day as a police officer, that he didn't say she's a shoplifter like the procedure says not to? What is more reasonable? And the answer there, ladies and gentlemen, is it is more reasonable to believe the detective who does this for a living and who proved that he can follow procedure. He did not make that statement calling her a shoplifter. Chandler's acted reasonably every step along the way, from Kelly Jackson to Kevin Flanagan to Pat Coran, from the decision to detain her to the decision to prosecute her. And it does not matter whether she did or did not steal that perfume. Do everything you can to remember this is about what was reasonable for Chandler's to believe as they were permitted under the law. And when you do that, ladies and gentlemen, I think you'll find, as the evidence has shown, that it cannot be true that Chandler's is guilty of any of the things the plaintiff alleges. And as tragic as it is, and as uncertain of an event as it is, and that she's had to go to therapy, Miss Adams has to go to therapy, this case is about reason and law. And I implore you to please make the right decision here today. Thank you very much.